Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. For today's beer review, we're going to be jumping into a couple different stouts, completely different. The first one is going to be Saugatuck Brewing Company's Blueberry Maple Stout. So a flavored stout, standard stout ABV. This is 6%. They are based out of Douglas, Michigan. And then second, we're moving to Weyerbacher's Belgian-style Imperial Stout with an 11.8% ABV, no flavoring. They are based out of Easton, Pennsylvania. So taking one flavored, one non-flavored, one imperial, one non-imperial, big gap in ABVs here and completely different in the way that they're presenting. So a dichotomous review today, really only bound by the fact that they're both stouts. So I'm really excited to jump into these. I've never had either of these beers prior. So we're going to get kicked off starting with the Saugatuck Blueberry Maple Stout at 6% ABV. Okay, getting started with our first beer. This is the Saugatuck Brewing's Blueberry Maple Stout, 6% ABV. They are based out of Douglas, Michigan. So really for label art, it's got a lumberjack smiling with a mug of beer, looking over a stack of pancakes, blueberry pancakes specifically. Nice hot stack of flapjacks there. That's about the extent of the bottle art. Nothing else really, so to speak. So let's get this poured right in the glass. Okay, nice and dark, and it's not horribly thick. At 6%, I would not expect it to be. Let's give this a bit of agitation, see if we can give it a chance to form a decent head here. Yeah, that formed a decent head. Effervescence, I know you can't pick up in the camera, but it's pretty effervescent, and it's got mostly pretty fine, tight, small carbonation bubbles coming up, some medium, so this head ought to hold okay. Visually, it's actually quite dark for just a standard 6%. I can just see through the bottom, holding it up to the light at the very bottom where it's thinner and less area to go through, but other than that, it's quite dark for a standard stout. Head still holding. Let's give it a sniff. Wow, that blueberry really is quite pungent in this. I did not expect that. Okay. Yeah, the blueberry really comes through. The maple is not as prevalent. It's just a hint on the back end, but it smells strongly of blueberry. I think I may be in for quite a pleasant surprise here. Head's already breaking down. You know, I thought it would hold okay. It's holding okay. It's got a little pad floating on top, but it's mostly dissipated, so yeah, let's jump right in. Man. Okay, that's very nice. That's very nice indeed. The blueberry comes through very dominant in this beer, and then the maple comes in, and it's probably about 65-35 percentage-wise blueberry maple. And honestly, I'm okay with that balance. Maple can overpower a beer to the point that any other flavors that you add in there get overshadowed. But the fact that they actually let the blueberry flavor come through in really a nice dark beer like this too is particularly interesting. Now, it didn't say it's a milk stout, but I can tell you this is sweet. Kind of along the line of the Saugatuck Neapolitan milk stout that I reviewed several episodes back. It's got about that same level of sweetness. So that does a couple of things. One, it makes the malt bill far less dominant than in your average stout. You don't get that roasty edge of the malts. And two, it helps bring the flavors that they did put in, the blueberry specifically and the maple as well, really come through as they naturally would taste to you as sweeter. So it didn't let, you know, the yeast eating all the sugars get rid of the flavor by adding that sweetness back in. I presume lactose. Yeah, it doesn't say on the bottle that it's a milk stout, but I would be willing to bet solid amounts of cash that it is indeed, as it has that sweetness which otherwise would not be present. I'm going to jump back in for a body mouthfeel finish. The body is medium, about what I expect for a 6%. Mouth feels quite creamy, very creamy indeed. The finish really comes on exactly as I described. It's blueberry up front with a nice burst of sweetness. Then the maple comes in, and it really is about 65-35, maybe even 70-30. But it's close to that approximation in balance of flavors, which I think is the right balance if you're going to make a beer with these two ingredients. The blueberry is going to get drowned out much more easily than the maple, so this actually lets the blueberry come through. And once they meld together and they keep that kind of equilibrium, it peaks and then it dissipates very cleanly, and it stays constant all the way down. It's almost like a straight line from the apex down to the end of the finish, which for a standard 6% stout is above average in its length. It's not ridiculously long, but it's certainly above average, and it lets you keep tasting individually that blueberry and that maple and that sweetness behind the two. The malts really don't come into play in this beer other than adding depth of character and obviously creating the base ABV. But there's no roasty edge to it. There's no hint of chocolate or coffee. It is pure blueberry and maple. This is a delicious flavored stout, and you know, blueberry maple stout, again, I gotta say with Saugatuck, when they make their flavored beers, they really do a good job of nailing what they Take two. They really do a good job of nailing what they intend to. The flavors come through very, very well, and there's not all this background flavor noise that comes through. They let their intended stars of the beer shine through, and this is no exception. This is very good. If you're a fan of sweeter beers, sweeter stouts, flavored stouts, sweeter flavored stouts, and you happen to also like blueberry and or maple, I think you would really, really, really enjoy this. This is very, very well done. It's exactly as advertised. This is blueberry maple stout. Well done yet again, Saugatuck. I'm going to take my time, sip on this, and when we get back, we'll get to our second completely different beer. This is the Weyerbacher Belgian-style Imperial Stout at 11.8% ABV. Okay, now moving on to our second beer of today's stout review. We've got the Weyerbacher Belgian-style Imperial Stout, 11.8% ABV, so almost double that of the Saugatuck, out of Easton, Pennsylvania. Typical Weyerbacher bottle art. It's got, you know, a lion on the front. It says tiny, which I guess is amusing. Nonetheless, let's get this poured straight in the glass here. Nice dark, significantly thicker. I'm going to try to agitate this a bit, give it a chance to form a head. Not really much in the way of head formation here. I don't expect retention will be much better, but as expected for an Imperial, it is absolutely pitch black. I would have guessed as much because it was very dark coming out of the bottle and very thick. That makes it very challenging for light to get through, which is exactly what I want to see. Let's give this a sniff. That smells very, very good. It actually smells like it has a slightly sweet edge to it. I don't know if it will, but that's how it smells, at least coming out of the bottle. It smells quite nice. Bit boozy too. It's definitely got a boozy edge to it. At 11.8% ABV, I'm not remotely surprised by that. And indeed, you know my theory on this. You have a big high ABV beer, a little boozy edge to it is not a problem. It lets you know that you're drinking a higher ABV beer. Indeed, the head and retention, not great on this one. It's already out of the way, or just a little cling on the side of the glass, not even a pad floating. But let's jump in, see what this is about. Oh, that's big. Oh, that's very big. That's a very big beer. Very deep. Okay, this will take at least one more sip through. First thing you get in your mouth is a little bit of the sweetness that you could smell and get on the nose. And immediately from there, you're hit with this big mouth of booze. I mean, it's just big and boozy. And then the malts start to come in. And this smells like it has smoked or peated malts, or both possibly. It's got a smoky edge to it. There's a deep roast, but it's beyond that which I've talked about in many different stout and imperial stout reviews, that kind of deep, richly roasted coffee, like an Italian or a French roast bean on the edge of burn. It's not like that. This is actual taste of smoked malts, peated malts. Much like some Scottish ales, Scotch ales, or Scottish wee heavies, or indeed German Rauch beer, smoke beer. This is big. It's bold. I'm going to jump back in for body, mouthfeel, finish. It's a very heavy body. It's a very heavy body. Pushing 12%. That's exactly what I would expect. Mouthfeel, quite viscous. It's quite thick. You can feel the weight of it and the thickness of it. Finish and development of the flavor profile. Exactly as described, and it kind of apexes at the peak with a mix of a boozy back on top of that, what tastes like smoked malt, and just a slight sweetness to it. Just a slight sweetness, which is kind of an interesting flavor combination. Once it peaks there, it really is smoked, peated tasting malt dominant with just a hint of sweetness on the back, and that boozy edge is gone once it hits the apex of the flavor. And then again, just like the Saugatuck, it's very much a linear line. There's not really a curve to it, so to speak, where it peters off. It just linearly straight to the bottom of the finish. And the finish for a beer this big, that high of an ABV, and to have that big of a body and that much viscosity, it's not particularly long at all. Really just the slightest, faintest hint of that lingering kind of smoked, peated malt flavor comes through at the very, very end, but it's pretty much done. Quite a bit quicker than I would anticipate for an average imperial stout. But it's a good beer. I enjoy this. I'll have to do a little research to see what it is they mean by Belgian style. I'm not sure really how the Belgians brew stouts comparative to other countries. I don't normally associate stouts with Belgium. In fact, I've probably had several hundred different Belgian beers over the years, and I'm trying to think if I've ever actually had a stout from Belgium. So I've got a little homework assignment, and I will post my findings in the comments on this video. Nonetheless, I'm going to take my time, finish sipping on this one, come up with my scores, and when we get back, we will get both beers ranked from top to bottom. Okay, now that we've gotten to enjoy both of these beers, we're going to go through and get them ranked from top to bottom, starting with the Saugatuck Brewing Company's Blueberry Maple Stout. This is a 6% flavored standard stout out of Douglas, Michigan. Aroma on this one. This had a really, really nice aroma for a stout. It wasn't one of those you could smell from feet away, but as you started getting more and more near, you were just smacked in the face with blueberry. Smelled really, really great. Now, I could only detect just a hint of the maple on the nose and really no malt backbone, so to speak, but it smelled very nice. I gave it an 8 out of 10. Taste on this one. Saugatuck yet again has done another flavored stout that I think they absolutely nailed it and nailed exactly its namesake. This was a blueberry maple stout. I mean, mission accomplished. It gets a 10 out of 10. Body on this. For a 6% stout, I actually expected it to be a bit bigger than it was. 6 isn't that high, but you know, it was okay. It was on the higher end of average, but you know, didn't blow me away in terms of breadth of body. It gets a 6. Mouthfeel on this. This was a fantastic mouthfeel. It was very, very textbook creamy stout. Almost felt like it came off a nitro tap. It was so creamy, and the effervescence once it started moving around the palate was so fine. I gave it a 10 out of 10. For the finish, it was a nice finish, and it was very, very even. The way that the flavors stacked, it just wasn't as long as many a stout, even at 6%. I still gave it above average. I gave it a 7. Head and retention on this one, it was pretty good. You know, I mentioned this in almost every review I do. Cleanliness of the glassware, how well or how poorly you pour the beer are the biggest three things when you're looking for head formation and retention at home. And if, you know, you do it well and the glassware is clean, you know, it's sometimes luck of the draw. This one did okay. It was above average. I gave it a 7. Appearance-wise, this was a beautiful stout. I was honestly shocked by how deep and dark the appearance was at only 6% as a standard stout. It really impressed me. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Balance on this. The balance on this I thought was superb. And while technically speaking the blueberry was more prominent than the maple, it kind of needed to be because maple's such an overpowering flavor in a beer that it can drown out everything else, and that they let the blueberries speak and come through both in aroma and in flavor. I absolutely appreciate it. I think they got the balance just right for this beer. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, much like their Neapolitan milk stout I reviewed several episodes back, I absolutely loved it. They do a really, really great job with their flavored stouts. I suspect this is a milk stout. I have to do research to double check. I'll put it in the comments once I find out more information. But it was great. It had a sweet edge to it. Let the blueberry really come through. Let the maple really come through. I absolutely thought it was fantastic beer. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, I think they nailed it. Again, blueberry maple stout, it was exactly as advertised. I don't think they could have done much to improve it. I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. That brings the total score on the Saugatuck Brewing's Blueberry Maple Stout to an 88 out of 100. That's a very, very high score, well above average indeed. Moving on to our second beer, I did finally figure out where I was kind of mentioning, oh, it says Tiny on the lion on the label. That's actually the name of the beer. Since I couldn't find the name, it occurred to me after the fact. So this is Weyerbacher's Tiny. It's a Belgian-style Imperial Stout, 11.8%, based out of Easton, Pennsylvania. The aroma on this one, it was quite a pronounced aroma. It actually smelled a little sweet and a mix of sweet and boozy, and you could get a sense of the malt backbone, but it didn't really give me an idea of how they were going to come through in the beer. But it was a very pronounced aroma. I give it a 9 out of 10. Taste-wise, the taste on this one, this is where I started having some issues with this beer. Number one, I'm not sure exactly what a Belgian-style stout is supposed to be. In all the years I've been drinking beer, I am positive I have never actually had a stout from Belgium. Not to say that they don't brew stout in Belgium. Indeed, I'm sure that they do, and they have influenced beer culture across many, many countries. It's kind of beer mecca on a global scale. But there isn't actually a specific style Belgian stout. To my knowledge, it's not a recognized beer style, so I'm not sure what they meant by that. And what I tasted in it, there was nothing about it that screamed Belgium to me at all. In fact, really, I was put far more in mind of Scotland because it had that kind of smoked peated malt backbone to it, which one typically associates with many Scotch ales, Scotch wee heavies, and also German Rauch beer, smoke beer. But I've never had anything like that from a Belgian brewer, and I've had many, many, many hundreds of different Belgian beers over the years from all sorts of brewers and all sorts of different styles. Nonetheless, I appreciated it for what it was, though I did find that smoked peated edge to the malt to be a bit overbearing, and especially when I didn't anticipate it. I gave it high end of average. I gave it a 6 out of 10. Body on this had a ridiculously big body, and at 11.8% ABV, I really appreciated that. It had a ton of substance. I mean, it was just as heavy as could be. I give it a perfect 10 out of 10. Mouthfeel. The mouthfeel was very viscous, but it was also very creamy, much like I really appreciated in a stout. And if I can get it poured from a bottle at my house with that same kind of creamy texture, it's a win-win. So couple nice viscosity on a high ABV with a creaminess. It was a wonderful mouthfeel. I gave it a 10 out of 10. Finish on this one. The finish on this one was above average, but it wasn't as long as I anticipated it to be given the ABV on this, especially as big-bodied and viscous. It just, the flavor didn't stick as long around the palate as I would have liked. Still high, certainly above average, high end of average, I gave it a 7. Head and retention on this one, was really not great. I poured pretty aggressively into that glass too, and it only just did create a head, and I don't think 30 seconds elapsed before the tiny bit it did form was completely gone. So creation and retention, not great at all. I give it a 2 out of 10. Appearance-wise, total 180, and it was just as black as night, pitch black. You couldn't see daylight through it at all, or indeed even my set lights. It was pitch black. That for me is textbook Imperial Stout. It gets a perfect 10 out of 10. For the balance, this was a well-balanced beer. You really could taste all the interplay of the different malts that they put into this beer, even though for me personally, I didn't particularly care for aspects of it. To say that it was unbalanced would be completely unfounded. It was exceptionally well balanced. I also really appreciated that with that high of an ABV, it did have a little booze bite to it, which I like in a higher ABV beer. I give it a 10 out of 10 for the balance. Filling in the intangible. How this beer made me feel while I was enjoying it. This is my one subjective category out of the 10, where I get to insert my own personal opinions and feelings. Okay, for this one, I enjoyed it, but I was confused as to what this beer was trying to be. I don't understand the Belgian-style stout or Imperial stout nomenclature. I mean, I'm pretty well versed in the world of beer across many different cultures and styles and subcategories, but I don't believe, I could be mistaken. It's possible I have something new to learn here, and I will certainly make comments to that effect, but I don't believe that a Belgian-style stout is a recognized beer style, and I really had no idea what to expect. I thought perhaps maybe it would have some Belgian wild yeast kind of influence, since that's massive in Belgium, and a lot of their beer culture is based on their wild local yeast strains. But I got, honestly, like an Imperial Stout version of a Scottish wee heavy. That's what this reminded me of, so I was left confused. I enjoyed it for what it was, but just high end of average, I gave it a 6. Finally, as an example of the style, I don't really know how to properly rate this, again, based on my lack of belief that this is actually a style unto itself. Maybe it's a new one they're trying to emerge or make a thing, like the whole hazy New England and all these other everybody makes something new and oh, it's a new style. I don't know. I've never seen another Belgian stout or Imperial stout, so I don't really have a gauge, but I played fair, assuming that I will come across some information in all the volumes of beer information that I read on a daily basis and figure something out here. So I decided to be fair, and I gave it the above average, low end of the above average scale. I gave it a 7. So that brings the total score to the Weyerbacher's Tiny, the Belgian-style Imperial Stout at 11.8% ABV, to a 77 out of 100. So above average, certainly above average, getting near the cleanly above average range. I absolutely loved the Saugatuck. The Weyerbacher confused me. I'm not going to say that I didn't love it. There are a few beers that I really, oh God, that's not for me. But I have to be as objective as possible and call it how I see it based on my categories. It's what I experienced. This beer may be a home run for anybody. If you like Rauch beer, or you like Scotch ales and Scotch wee heavies that have a more smoked peated malt kind of back to them, you would probably really enjoy this, particularly if you enjoy stouts anyway. And this was just a delicious dessert stout. It just was. Saugatuck does it as well as anybody I could think of. So ladies and gentlemen, that's today's review. As always, I sincerely appreciate you tuning in today. Please don't forget to subscribe. That'll keep our videos in your feed so you won't lose the channel. Like always helps us if you like the content, and it helps others find our channel. And comments are really big. So please do feel free to drop me a line in the comments on this or any of my many, many, many videos. I want to hear from you. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know any questions you have, suggestions, things you like, dislike. Let me know down in the comments. Lastly, if you want to keep in the loop when our videos go live to YouTube, just click the little notification bell icon. It is right next to the subscribe button. Until next time, folks, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.